Hello everyone and welcome back to day 15 of Preptober. Today I'm here to talk to you about points of view, which I always want to abbreviate to POVs instead of piece of V, because point of view, not point of views. Very confusing, let's go. Now I'm going to start this off by saying a sentence that you've never heard me say in this series at all, especially not the last week, which is look at your Magna Carta. You might have put there if you prefer first person over third person or vice versa, and that might be a good starting point. But if you haven't done that, and if you don't know what you prefer, I'm here today to sort of break down different points of view. So I'm going to list some pros and cons with the 3 different points of view that you can use, which is first person, third person, and I'm also going to talk about second person. So first up, we have first person, conveniently, first and first. And this is when you are in the head of a specific character and you write the story, I do this or I did this, and they're talking to me and so on. It's in first person. It's just as how you would describe yourself doing something. This point of view allows you to really get into that person, not in a sexual way, because you get to hear their thoughts. You get to see this character interact with someone else and see and hear and read their thoughts on this interaction, which lets you get to know this person, this character, quite well. There are some differing opinions about doing this when you have multiple POV characters, so when you hop from different heads throughout the story. Some people think that first person is a lot easier for this because you are now in Steve's head. I'm gonna keep going with Steve for a while, because now you're in Steve's head and Steve is talking to Marie and he thinks that Marie is really cute. And then you skip to Marie's head, probably in a new chapter, otherwise it gets very confusing, and you skip into Marie's head and she's talking to Steve and she thinks that he's being annoying. Some people think that's a lot easier, some people think it's a lot more difficult to keep the point of view characters apart unless they have really, really distinct voices. And this can be really hard to write. I myself do like writing dual point of view books, and I think that that's what I'm going to do this time around as well. I'm still trying to figure out some things for my nano project, but I really enjoy it. I am not a great judge of whether or not my characters are very distinctive when I do that. If their voices are very distinctive, I rarely get past the first draft, so let's not talk about that. But I really enjoy doing it, and it's definitely something you can work on along the way as you go through with your edits and your future drafts. It is, however, a very limiting point of view because you only know what your main character knows. And Steve, the I in this story, doesn't know that Marie went home and cried yesterday until she tells him. Even though you, the writer, know that, and if you have dual POV story, you might know that because you might have seen Marie go home and cry last night. But Steve doesn't know this, and that's something to keep in mind, and it's something to make sure that you don't share information that they don't know already. Since you're also in the head of this character and you see the world the way they see the world and you hear their thoughts and everything, it becomes a very unreliable narration because you only get to see what Steve thinks about the world, not what the world is actually like, because you only get his perspective on it, and that can make for an unreliable narration. Moving on into second person, this is very rarely used and it can be quite difficult to do it well. Basically, writing in the second person means that you're writing everything as a you're writing to someone. So instead of I walk down the street or she walks down the street, which is first and third, you have second person where you write you walk down the street, which it's very rare, and it can work, but it's quite difficult and quite different. It is also, just like first person, quite limited. And a lot of people don't like second person. Now, this should not be the thing that deters you from writing it, but it can be something to keep in mind. But if you want to give it a go, do it. Just because a lot of people don't like it doesn't mean you shouldn't try it. And then we have third person. Third person is he did this, she does that. It's talking about someone else. Some people think that this is an easier way to follow multiple characters around because instead of splitting the narrative between I, Steve, and I, Marie, you now have he, Steve, and she, Marie, doing something. So you see the characters from the outside as opposed to from within. With third person, you can have it be limited where you only know what the character knows. So in the previous example, he, Steve, doesn't know that Marie went home and cried until she told him. Or you can have an omniscient perspective on it, where you, the narrator, is not Steve, and you know everything that's going on in the world. So Steve didn't know that Marie went home and cried last night, but she was still sad. Is a sentence you can throw in there. Kind of a bad sentence, but you can throw it in there, and that's fine. And you know, and the reader knows, but Steve doesn't know. And it's really important with third person to pick if you're writing limited or omniscient, because you need to know that, and mixing and matching does not work. When it comes down to it, like with everything else, it's about personal preference. If you want to write third person, write third person. If you want to write first person or second person, go with that. And it is totally fine to start off writing in first person and then realize, no, wait, this story would actually do a lot better in third person, and switch to that. Obviously, you'll have to go back at some point during or after the drafting of this first draft and fix the first person point of view into third person after the fact, but don't let it stop you. Don't let starting in the wrong POV stop you from winning NaNoWriMo. Anyway, that is all I have for you today. I'll be back with another video tomorrow, so I'll see you then. Bye!